Many games use visual cues, most commonly some kind of heads-up display marker, to specifically tell the player where to go next. But Outer Wilds is different.
It's very free-form, it's entirely, I would say, player-directed.
This is Kelsey Beecham, the writer for Outer Wilds.
I did all in-game text, and I collaborated on the story and narrative design with the creative director and the lead designer.
And as she explains, the game is unique in that it relies on player curiosity.
So it's a game about curiosity, it's a game about exploration, it's archaeology in space, it's a lot of things.
It started out as just like, I want to make a space exploration game, and eventually kind of drilled down to this idea that this was going to be a game about exploring to answer questions.
This is Alex Beecham, creative director of Outer Wilds, who began developing the game as part of his master's thesis.
We wanted players to be the ones asking the questions themselves, which meant we had to make them curious, which led to this idea that it's a game where exploration is motivated solely by the player's own intrinsic curiosity.
Which raises the question, how do you make a player curious? And once they're curious, how do you tell a compelling story entirely through the free, open exploration of an environment? So today we're going to launch into the mysterious world of Outer Wilds to discover how the game positions the player as an explorer, to examine how it forces players to master the challenges of a perilous open world, and to investigate how the game manages to tell a compelling story entirely through the player's unbounded exploration of a fascinating environment. Welcome to Story Mode, Outer Wilds.
Player curiosity is the driving force in our game. It's what moves the story forward. It's how the story is told. That is our only driving force in this game. That's it. If the player is not curious about the world around them, everything breaks down.
And so it was on us to find a way to make players curious without literally telling them, hey, go here and do this.
The beginning of Outer Wilds is all about sparking player curiosity. The game opens as you, the player, wake up on a tiny planet called Timber Hearth. As you wander around, you learn that you're a member of an alien species called the Haerthians, who have built a village in one of the planet's craters. And as Kelsey explains, the design of both the Haerthians and the player character help encourage curiosity.
So when you start out, we do some work narratively to position you as an explorer. You're the latest graduate of your space program. It's your first big solo launch.
But this idea of positioning the player as a space explorer took several iterations. Originally, the villagers looked down on the idea of space travel, and the player character was the only one in the village who cared about space. What the game makers found in playtests, however, was that players actually took what the villagers were saying to heart and became less interested in space exploration. So the Haerthians were rewritten to make space exploration a part of their culture. Even the structure of the dialogue interactions evolved to better communicate the nature of the game. For example, in the village, the player can chat with a Haerthian named Hornfels, who raises questions about the goal of the game in the player's mind.
The dialogue that Hornfels has in the museum went through a bunch of iterations too, because originally they were like, space is sure changing up there, have fun. And then people were like, what is this game? What do I do? We tried a version where Hornfels says, there are no goals, truly, just do whatever. And that didn't help either, like made it worse. And then we finally landed on the version where Hornfels is like, what is your goal? And just that was trying to communicate, hey, this is a game where you are supposed to make your own goals and ask your own questions, but then here are some prompts. You don't have to do any of these, but it conveys like what purpose of the game is going to be, what kind of a game it is, and hopefully helps players who are a little nervous to just sort of make their own fun, as it were.
But the place that most powerfully communicates the idea of exploration is the village's museum, which is full of interesting facts about the solar system your planet is in.
The museum exists to tease at things you're going to find elsewhere in the game and try to create that atmosphere of, hey, everything you hear about in this world actually exists somewhere. This is a world where things tell you little stories about things that actually do in fact happen.
In the museum, you discover dioramas of other planets, hints about the strange laws of physics in this world, and a glimpse of the mystery at the heart of the game's story. A lost civilization called the Nomai.
the core mystery of the game is what was so interesting that the Nomai got stranded in your solar system trying to investigate, and generations of Nomai spent their lives trying to get closer to.
Before you ever leave the ground, the game positions the player as a space explorer preparing for their first launch, suggests discoveries that might lie ahead, and raises intriguing questions about an ancient civilization. Equipped with all this information, there's only one thing left for the player to do. Begin to explore this open and dangerous universe. From here on out, the player is on their own and can do whatever they want. So as a game developer, how do you continue to shape their experience?
We wanted players to explore the world we created because they were curious and they were creating their own questions and they wanted to go out and find answers, and not us telling them, hey, here's a quest you can go on.
Rather than explicitly sending the player to any particular location, Outer Wilds is full of clues that implicitly guide the player.
So at first you go off into space and you're just going to randomly explore, but whatever you find is always going to be telling you about something, about one of these 4 mysteries elsewhere in the world, and if you're curious, you can follow this trail of clues and it will answer a major question about the world.
For the most part, these clues come in the form of Nomai texts, pieces of information and conversations that were left behind by the Nomai.
The ancient aliens, the Nomai, that were in the solar system long before you, have left pieces of writing on the ground, on the walls, and the spaces around you that you can interact with in physical ways.
And we were very careful in the way we set those up and in the wording, where we never suggest that you should do something, we only make it clear that you can do something. And it's this idea of giving players the tools they need to answer the questions that they've come up with themselves.
Each clue raises a new question in the player's mind and points toward a secret area that will answer one of the game's 4 main mysteries. But to encourage and reward exploration, each trail of clues is spread out across all the planets.
All of those big secret areas are on different planets. There's not a planet that has like 2 of them. The clues to each of those, we tried to scatter, like we didn't want this planet to be about this one mystery. We wanted people to have to hop around in order to solve that mystery, so to speak.
So in order for the player to solve the game's 4 main mysteries, exploration isn't just optional, it's necessary. But in Outer Wilds, exploration can be a risky business. Whether it's losing your footing and slipping into a black hole, suddenly finding yourself in the jaws of a terrifying anglerfish, or being pulled by gravity directly into the sun. The player is facing an unforgiving universe.
We wanted this to be a mystery adventure game where you actually have to work to find the clues. Like nature is pushing back against you. It's dangerous. You might die. It's not the static environment where you kind of go and solve the puzzles and put together the pieces. We wanted this layer on top of it of you are out in nature and you are subjected to the elements because it's all about the world changing around you in ways that you have absolutely no control over.
And even as the changing environment pushes the player can't push back.
It was very important that you can't change the world. All you can do is learn about it and change how you interact with the world through that knowledge. It's not about you kind of busting through barriers.
The player is given several tools to help them on their journey, but even these tools don't have any kind of mechanical progression.
There's no gating, there's no locking. You don't get a new mechanic like a double jump like you might in a Metroidvania and then suddenly you can access new areas. It's all there for you to interact with right off the bat.
And to top it all off, there's one last environmental obstacle that is the biggest of all. This game takes place in a time loop, resetting every 22 minutes when the sun goes supernova, forcing the player all the way back to square one as they wake up on Timber Hearth once again at the start of the game. So, what do all these objectives and constraints mean for the player experience? Well, it means that to access the more difficult to reach clues, you will have to become an expert at navigating each of these dangerous environments. To gather all the puzzle pieces to answer your questions, you will have to learn more clever ways to use the tools at your disposal. And to understand the full story of what happened to the Nomai, you will have to connect all the dots. In short, this isn't a game where your character levels up. In Outer Wilds, you must level up. So what does this look like in action? To demonstrate how curiosity can motivate a player to overcome obstacles in order to solve a mystery, let's look at just one of the many discoveries you can make in the game by journeying to the Lakebed Cave. So let's say you're exploring the planet Ember Twin, either because you're investigating a clue or simply because you've randomly decided to come here. You turn a corner and find yourself in a cave with a big rock. As you look around, you notice that the rock sometimes disappears when you're not observing it. If you explored the museum back on Timber Hearth, you learned that in this world there are quantum shards, which cause themselves and nearby objects to move when you're not looking at them. Near where the rock used to be is a piece of Nomai text, which you can translate with your translator tool. The translator tool creates an interface through which players can interact with Nomai texts. And like the story itself, these texts are non-linear.
The Nomai text actually looks quite a bit like my note-taking, where I tend to split off from a main point to pursue other thoughts. You always start at the actual starting point, but then you can kind of follow the branching as you like, as it interests you. Longer branches visually tended to hold the bits that are really like advancing your story or conveying your main conflict, that sort of thing.
Rather than simply pressing a button to go to the next line, the player must physically move the translator to each line they want to translate.
That really did improve player interaction with the text significantly, and it definitely improved reading retention, because we're conveying a lot of information that you need to be able to piece together eventually to solve the mysteries in the game and to, follow the main story.
The text in this cave mentions the disappearance of a Nomai named Calleros, explaining that he was there one moment and gone the next. It then goes on to suggest that investigating the Lakebed Cave on the north pole of the planet could prove useful. Notice how the name Lakebed Cave stands out.
We made very sure to make sure everything that's referenced in the narrative and in the writing physically exists somewhere in the world. If a concept is or a location is talked about in the text, you can eventually figure out how to go there.
So now that your curiosity is piqued, you have an idea of where you can explore next. But the environment is pushing back against you. This planet is rapidly and irreversibly being filled with sand, so the entrance to the Lakebed Cave may already be blocked. So when the next time loop starts, you know that time is of the essence. You wake up, get to your ship, fly to Ember Twin, head to the bottom of the lakebed at the North Pole, and find a cave entrance. But the cave is impossibly dark and difficult to navigate, with powerful rivers of sand threatening to carry you away. However, if you've learned to use one of your tools, the scout launcher, you'll be able to light the way and take pictures of what lies around the bend. Eventually, you find your way to the cave from which Calleros the Nomai disappeared. And as you look around, you have an opportunity to discover something that fundamentally changes how you play the game.
As we started working on it, we realized we didn't want the rules you were learning to feel sort of like one-off solutions. We wanted them to feel systemic. Like you were learning a fundamental law about the world, and once you know it, you sort of see it everywhere. It changes your perspective. Oh, now I know why this whole planet works the way it does. That feels a lot more like a scientific discovery, honestly.
The key to beating the game lies in making these paradigm-shifting scientific discoveries. As you read the Nomai text, you discover how Calleros disappeared. He was standing on the wandering rock, then the lamp of the Nomai observing him went out, and when it came back on, Calleros and the rock were gone. If the player is paying close attention and can put two and two together, then they have just made a game-changing discovery.
Oh god, it's always such a cool moment with players. There's sort of this moment where they get it, and they know, they're like, oh shit, that's what's happening, that's what's going on here. It's beautiful.
Your tools haven't changed, and the places you can go haven't changed. But suddenly, you've unlocked a new rule about how to navigate this world because you have changed. The better the player gets at navigating and understanding the rules of the world, the more story fragments they're able to access, and the more an overarching narrative begins to emerge.
It's the kind of game where your progression is gated by your understanding of the story.
And as you get toward the end of that story, you start realizing, I think maybe the magnitude of what is going on in the world.
Outer Wilds is a great example of how to create a game experience that relies entirely on player curiosity.
I think we definitely learned that most people are just naturally curious, but they're curious in different ways, and sometimes you have to prime them to be in that mode. Once people are like, oh, there's something afoot here, I'm gonna figure it out, like they really go for it. And sometimes they start digging into things, you're like, oh no, we didn't even think that people would do that.
Players are smart. They can put these things together. They don't need constant hand-holding. They don't need me to, slap a beacon on the next part they have to get to. They can put this stuff together. They got it.
After being thrown into an open, dangerous universe with minimal guidance and a burning desire for answers, the player is left to discover how fun, frustrating, and fulfilling it can be to explore the Outer Wilds. Hey guys, Michael here. Hope you enjoyed our video on Outer Wilds. If you want to help us make more videos celebrating game developers and the work that they're doing, you can support us on Patreon. When you pledge, you get access to our Story Mode Discord server, full-length interviews with Alex Beecham and Kelsey Beecham, and your name in the credits of each video. I want to say a big thank you to Alex and Kelsey for taking the time to chat with us, and thank you to our patrons for making this channel possible. If you want more episodes of Story Mode, you can help us grow the channel by liking, subscribing, and sharing this video. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.